Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Saudara-saudara muslimku di Takwa Channel. Kali ini ada sebuah tayangan keturunan Latin dalam perjalanan yang mendapatkan hidayah. Beliau ini mendapatkan jalan hidup yang cukup pahit dengan segala macam penderitaannya. Yuk kita simak bersama. Semoga menjadi inspirasi bagi kita semua.
Is this rooting from their denial of you reverting? My journey with my parents currently, me going no contact, me setting boundaries, is not about me being Muslim, alhamdulillah. It's a bit deeper than that. For those who don't know, I did experience CSA, so child abuse. I was raped by my mother's brother. I was 8 to 9 years old. It occurred throughout a few months. And it also did not happen to only me. I did not feel safe enough to tell my parents when it happened. I didn't understand what it even was. It wasn't until I was 10 years old that my cousin from El Salvador moved in with us. And, we were young girls and we were staying up late, and in the middle of the night in our closet, we were just talking, and I told her what happened. And the other person that it happened to as well was there, and that's when we realized that it happened to the both of us. My cousin was a bit older than us, so I was 10, she had to be 15 already. She was livid, she was disgusted, and she told my mom. And that's when my parents found out that it happened. I was taken to the hospital to do a rape kit, and obviously time had passed, there wasn't going to be any physical evidence, no semen or anything like that, but they would be able to just examine and evaluate me. I remember around that time a CPS person got involved, and I remember being interviewed, I remember being asked questions, and I remember being coached by my parents. I remember being told what to say and what not to say because they didn't want my uncle to go to jail. So my biggest worry at that time was to not get my uncle put in jail, because that would ruin his life. I actually have my Tinkerbell diary that I have been holding on to, and I also have my Nintendo DSi that I had at the time. And my Nintendo DSi, I have photos of me with my uncle. I don't know, I'm just holding on to that Nintendo because I want to go back and look at those pictures to kind of understand the reality of it, I guess. In my Tinkerbell diary, I found an entry of me around the time that I was going to talk to the CPS agent. And in that entry, I'm talking to God and I'm talking to myself, saying that I hope I don't get my uncle put in jail, like I hope I don't mess up, and this and this and that. And reading that was extremely hard to me, because can you imagine being a little girl and that just happened to you, and your only concern is your rapist? Yeah, that was extremely hard for me to comprehend as a grown adult. I told them that it didn't happen and I was confused. Fast forward, I was 10 years old. So fast forward to 12. At this point, I'm extremely depressed. I gained lots of weight. I went from being a little girl that did not gain weight, and I would be told you need to eat more, you need to eat more, you need to eat more. And then after this all happened, I rapidly gained weight. And then I started hearing, you need to lose weight, 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 you're fat. And it was from my mom, it was from my dad. I was extremely depressed to the point where I would write letters to my mom because I couldn't express myself fully because I would cry. And I wrote in one of the letters that I vividly remember, I told her that I don't want to be alive anymore. I would always write these letters and give them to her to see her reaction, to see if she would care. And in that specific letter, I remember her reading it and her laughing, saying, ha ha ha, like, no eres nada completa. Like, you're silly, pretty much just belittling it. And I feel like that was a cry for help at such a young age. And again, they did not care enough to pay attention to me. It was like 11, 12. I go to junior high and I'm extremely insecure. I'm extremely broken down. I'm a little girl that is struggling to even exist, and I'm extremely confused because I don't know where it's coming from. Because I was told what to say, and I was told that I was confused, and I lied about it, and I was forced to kind of move on with life pretending that it actually never happened. I convinced myself that it actually didn't happen. So I'm growing older, I'm growing into a teenager, and life is extremely heavy. I've never been happy, and I feel empty inside, and I don't know why. For the longest, I really thought that I felt that way because of my parents' divorce, but it wasn't until later on in life, when I was around 20 years old, that I realized I was severely depressed and anxious because of my sexual assault. It was really hard for me to process. I'm gonna have to split this into separate parts. It's way too long, so follow me so you can follow along. This is part 2 of why I decided to go no contact and set boundaries with my parents. Part 1 talks more in detail about the initial issue, so you can go watch that. This is just a continuation of my journey. So when I was in high school, I got severe cystic acne. I have PCOS, which PCOS already is linked to trauma. Go figure. I developed severe cystic acne to the point where I got truancy at school, even though I had good grades. My principal called me in. She was like, "You have good grades, but you're never at school. Like, what is going on?" I remember breaking down crying. Like, I did not even want to wake up and look at myself in the mirror because of how bad it was. It was extremely traumatic, and it was just another stab in my heart to realize that I'm physically in pain, emotionally in pain, and my parents could care less to get me any help. I didn't even have insurance when I was like underage because my parents were too petty to figure out who was gonna get me insurance. It wasn't until my principal threatened my parents saying, like, "You need to help your daughter or I'm gonna take you out to court for child neglect." And this was her not knowing about my sexual assault. This was me not even bringing that to light. If I would have told her that, she definitely would have taken them to court. It would have been very obvious that their lack of action shows carelessness. I'm not saying that it was intentional. I think they just were not in the right mindset. They did not understand what parenting required, and they just kind of left me in the dark. And all of these extra things, the acne, the job, this is all just to paint a picture to y'all about the additional things that they put me through on top of my child sexual abuse. Later in my teenage years, when my grandma came into the picture, everything really changed for the worse. Obviously, it was her son that raped me. And she is one of the main people that have refused to hold him accountable. She still talks to him. And it was a few years ago when she was on FaceTime with him right in front of me. And I didn't realize at first, but she turns the camera around and like shows him me. And I literally froze. I got so mad, and I think I shut down. I really shut down. I don't even know if I walked away. I don't know if I stayed there, but it was clear that I was triggered. And these are things that she would do. She would talk about him and everything, like if nothing happened. And then my mom started doing that. There's a point in time where my mom really never brought him up, but then she started talking about him more and more and more often. And she would speak to me as if he's a normal person. And I would sit there and be like, and she'd be like, "What?" And I'm like, I don't care to hear about him. I don't care to know anything about him. I don't want to hear his name. And she would act like I'm being like ridiculous for asking of that. And honestly, it just kept escalating worse and worse to this year, which is where I drew the line. I'm going to make another video to just go more into detail about my situation. The video is obviously already long, so go to the next part.